Lot Gemara. Today we are concluding Masechta Bava Metzia. We are up to today the last Daf Kufiyut Tes, but we are actually up to Kufiyut Ches Amud Beis, where it says Amar Abaye, about 8 lines in the wide lines. Just to remind you what we're learning over here. We're learning here that if you put something out into the street, let's say fertilizer, garbage, it has to be removed straight away. Everything has to be organized, moved straight away. And then we had a discussion about if you're building something in the main place in Shus Rabim, according to the Tanakh, it has to be done straight away. You can't leave anything lying about. Or your preparation, if you're done in a private place, you just bring it straight out as you're ready to build. But even though we granted you permission to build in Shus Rabim, if you cause any damage, liability, you have to shoulder the liability, and you're responsible. And Rav Shimon Gamliel argues on 2 fronts. First one, he says to give you 30 days if you need to build something, I'll give you 30 days to leave things there. And number 2 is, since you have permission, you're not liable. So the Gemara then had a discussion whether Rabbi Yehuda would be the author. Actually would argue with our Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda says that if you have permission to bring out your garbage and fertilizer into the street, and you want people to trample over it and to assist you, you're allowed to. So we're up to Abaye, and Abaye has this. He does this quite often, that he makes a shitta. He finds a number to know him to say the same thing. And the principle that he's looking for here is that if we grant permission to do something, then you're not liable if anything happens. Says the Amar Abaye said, Rabbi Yehuda, Rav Shimon Gamliel, and Rav Shimon, Kulu Sira, they all hold. Kamakish Nosla Chachamim Reshus, we're on Kufiyut Ches Amud Beis, right in the middle of the page. Whenever the Chachamim give one permission to do something, v'hizik, and as a result of during that period he caused damage, potter, he is potter, because he did it within his or her rights. Rabbi Yehuda Hadam, we just said in the Mishnah, we just said Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that in the season when people bring out the fertilizer into the street, you're allowed to bring it in the street, so people should trample on it. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, what's this Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel? In our Mishnah, it's not Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Af mesakinus malachta lifnei shleishim. Rabbi Shimon holds that if you're building in the public space, you're allowed to bring your materials there and have it there for 30 days. Plus, you're not liable. Rabbi Shimon, who's this Rabbi Shimon Rabbi is referring to? Now we learned in the Mishnah. We're actually learning about Basa. What happens if there's a person living upstairs and there's a person living downstairs, and the person wants to put some heavy items in upstairs, for example, a heavy oven or a stove, and plus it generates heat and everything else. So if you're going to place your big oven upstairs, you need to make sure you have a thicker floor, that the plaster should be 3 tvachim thick. Normally maybe it's 1 tefach thick, but because you have this heavy oven there and the heat and everything else, you have to have plaster 3 tvachim. Will be killed by a stove, which is not as heavy and less heat, then a tefach of plaster is sufficient. And even if you follow these instructions, because damage, you have to pay for the damage that you incurred. Rav Shimon says, why do we give you some money? The reason why we told you 1 tefach of plaster for a stove and 3 tvachim for an oven is, if you follow these rules, then we'll consider it an oinus, a total oinus, and you will be potter from paying. The Tanakh says we give you this unit because these are recommendations that we think that is pretty safe, but doesn't mean that that just takes away your liability. You're still liable. You have to be careful. Okay, so that's a shitta, which means that we don't. But never buy said this is a shitta. I mean, these are like all yichidim. These are individuals, and that's not the halacha. We learned an interesting thing here. Let's say you're about to build a building or whatever it is. You have a number of players there. You have a number of different people with different professions involved. So tell them we learned. The first person you have is the person who's out the stones from the mountain, a quarry or something. So as long as he's doing the work, he's responsible. But once he gives it over to the person who's going to smooth out the stones, then Hassas is chayiv. If the person who smooth out the stones or the person who smooth out, now it's his responsibility. We just started the Gemara Kufiyut Ches Amud Beis. So we now learn that even though you have permission to do something, you still have to take responsibility. And if anything happens under your watch, you are responsible. So the Gemara says, so again, Kufiyut Ches Amud Beis, we'll just tell them what we learned. About 4 lines above the Mishnah. So we learned, so the person who's at the stones gives it over to the person who will smooth out the stones. Then from now on, that person now who's smoothing out the stones, if anything happens, at this stage, he's now responsible. Then the next step is after he's doing other things, he gives it to the person who's going to freight it across to wherever the building site is. So now the one who freights it takes responsibility. Then the chamor gives it over to the person who physically carries it, let's say, from the truck to the into the warehouse, wherever the building site is. Now that person is the one who's responsible. Then the casa gives it over to the builder. Now the builder takes responsibility. Then the banoi gives it over to the one who blazed the bricks, the bricklayer. Then now adrikal chayv. The im hiniach even al hadimus, if the bricklayer completed his work, and now he puts a one brick on top of the entire wall to show that he completed his job. Then if something happens afterwards, kulon chayamin. So there's not one person. If the building collapses or anything else, everyone involved in the building is responsible. L'sham the why? What time you learned achel chayv? The last person who was involved is the one who's chayv, and not everybody else. If each person was hired individually, look at each one who was, was an employee for a certain period of time. Once they finish their job, they're no longer involved. So what do you want from them? So then taka de potter. That's the brisa that says the rest of potter. But can be kablanos if they were all under a contract, one contract. Whether you go to a building, you get one contract to build a house. And then the building has all the different other contractors. Then they're all responsible for the building that collapses. Okay, next Mishnah. Shtei ginois zu agabe zu. So now we learn about a house with 2 stories and one top of the other, so on. What happens? You have or an alipris. You have 2 gardens. One on top of the others. 2 neighbors, 2 gardens. One garden is raised, elevated, and the other garden is depressed. And then what happened was the hayereg big time, and you have climbing the wall of the upper garden, which is in the airspace of the lower garden. You have vegetables grown. Who owns those vegetables? Now it's coming out of the dirt of that wall. So the dirt of that wall belongs to the upper garden. There's no question about it. However, the garden itself is growing in the airspace of the one below. So who ends up owning these vegetables? The hayed bin time is a machlekes. Is a mayor says she'elyon. A mayor says she'elyon. Why? Because where's he getting all the nutrients from? The soil is from the one above. And Rabbi Yehuda says shatach. Rabbi Yehuda says no. You look at the tachten because it's in the airspace of the tachten. Amar Meir said, without the soil, there's no vegetable growing here. So the one above is the main person. Says that Rabbi Yehuda encounters that is his airspace. He can fill it with dirt and all the way up to raise it to the same level as the garden above, and then you'll be any vegetables at all. If he fills up his garden, there's no vegetables. Amar Meir says, you're right. Each one can prevent the other one from having these vegetables. So who's the part of the dominant player here? Says the Meir. Let's see where it's getting its nutrients from, which is the soil, and that's from the one above, and therefore that's the one who actually owns it. Comes on Rabbi Yehud. Shimon says, "I'm sure this is
to pay him for using his airspace."
There's no such thing. Because the other guy obviously is not Moichel, otherwise he could have said to him, I don't want it to grow here, but he let it there. So he's Moichel, let's say. Maybe, or so it comes up Shimon, he makes an interesting pshana. I'll give us, they both have a svara. The soil from above and the airspace from below. So the guy above can actually reach those vegetables that the guy above can reach. Kosher El Yochel a little Hareshla will give it to the guy, grant it to the guy above. And Bahashar and the rest that he cannot reach because he can't get to it. The only way to get to it is by trespassing. And he's embarrassed to trespass and be accused of being a gadlus and so on. And the guy below won't give him permission because he wants it for himself. So therefore, that's the reasonable pshara. Says the Gemara, when it comes to the actual roots of this particular vegetable, there's no argument the Elyon happens. There's no argument that belongs to the Elyon because it's in the soil of the Elyon. The branches, what's sprouting out from the soil into the airspace. That may have shadi noifei basari kari. What's the value of the branch without the roots? Nothing. So therefore, it's like buckled to the roots. The roots give the whole chayas to the branches. So therefore, it's buckled. Rabbi Yehuda holds loy amrina shadi noifei basari kari. Rabbi Yehuda says that no, that true it came from the shaydet, but has a life of its own, and therefore whatever it is, it is. Now this argument of shadi noifei basari kari we have in many places in Shas, including in the Shabbos we had. Okay, says the Gemara. How do we know that? The time we learned Hayayit say a similar argument, not exactly the same, but we learned as follows: if a person sells someone, we learned if you sell someone a few trees in a property, you're not only selling the trees, you're also selling the land in between. But if you sell someone an individual tree, then all that person gets is the tree, not the land around it. So what about things that grow out from the tree? Are they included in the sale or not? I sold you this tree the way it is right now, and now something another tree pops out of it. What happens then? The Tanya we learned hayoyit, so it depends. Hayoyit say min hageza or min hashroshin. It could either come out of the roots. Shadish is a word for roots that are underneath the ground. Geza is whenever we use the word geza, Rashi says in the rules, anything above the ground. It could be it's growing out of the roots. You have roots above the ground, or it could be the actual tree. From the tree comes out another tree. So Hayoyitze min hagezel min hashroshin hadi elu shabala karka dibra meir. Rameya says, well, they all come from the ground because the shaydish definitely is the ground. I didn't sell you any dirt. I didn't say any part of the karka. I only sold you the tree. So therefore, that was retained by the original owner. So anything that comes out of the tree had to get all those nutrients from the ground is not part of the sale and belongs to the bala karka. And again, so we see that made the idea that everything comes from the karka, including the noifa. And Rabbi Yehuda says, "Min hageza shabala ilah, min ashra shabala karka." He says, "No, that which grows out of the tree belongs to the tree because it has a life of its own. Once it comes out of the ground, even though the siba is the ground, that you get nutrients, but the tree has a life of its own. So anything grows out of the tree above the ground is part of the tree. But I grant you that anything from the roots below the ground that comes from the soil, just like he was made before. But not that's one same idea. But now a similar thing we learned, similar principle. Gabe Erla, we learned that similar thing by Erla. Right, the first 3 years of a new tree, you're not allowed to have any hana from any of the fruits or anything else. So now by Erla, it grows out of the tree. A new tree grows out of the tree. The Haigabla similarly. Elon hayotze min sarameh. Again, if a tree comes out min hageza, umin hashroshin is as if it's coming out of the ground. It's like a new tree. You have all the dinim of Arla. Here Rashi says this. Rashi tells the rule that Rashi adds something which before we discuss that if it grows within 3 tfachim of the ground, then it's considered as if it's a new tree, it's part of the ground. Because it has to be 3 tfach, like lovud. But Dibra Yehuda says min hageza potter. If it comes out of the tree, then it's part of the tree. And since the tree is no longer in the years of Arla, it's more than 3 years old. So too, this additional tree that came out of the tree is part of the tree. But min hashroshin chayiv, it came out from the shaydish, from the roots below the ground, then you're chayiv. So the chayiv is exactly the same argument. The case of Arla, the case of Mekach and Memcha. So why do you have to have the same argument twice? And we need them. The Ashmini Kamais wasn't do the case of Mekach and Memcha buying and selling. If it grows out of the tree, that's included in the tree, or that's considered part of the owner of the land. I would say Mishum de Mamoina, because it's money. So therefore, over there we're sort of makel, and we say, you know what? It's not a mayor holds it's not included in the sales part of the ground. Because by money, you can't be machmer makel by money in a way, because whatever you machmer by one, you're being makel to another person. There's always 2 people involved there. One guy wins, one guy loses. So therefore, you say, you know what, it's part of the ground. Avogabe Erla di suitable. When it comes to Erla, come on, question of Isa. We don't know whose it is. Let's be machmer. Maybe it'll be made. You know what? When it comes to Erla, we'll treat it as if it's from the ground, and we're going to have all the dinim of Erla. The only dinim of Erla, I would say, but how come only over here that may argues he's machmir because Isa. Avobahi, when it comes to Mekach Memcha, even might have been it's part of the tree. You saw the tree, you saw everything that comes out of the tree as well. So therefore we need both arguments. Amar Reb Shimon. I'm not going to finish the actual last line. I'll leave that for Hasim. So anybody wants to say with pleasure. And here we have some Zaynus to Hasim. Amar Reb Shimon. Kosher Elyon Yochel Lifshet. That if the person can extend his hand and reach it, then we say that is considered part of the owner of the elevated garden, and anything beyond that, it's not his anymore. When we say he can stand on his hand, doesn't mean that he stands on his tippy toes and he can fall down and hurt himself. It's not about a normal extension of your hand that you can, not that you're holding one hand over here and you're hanging over here on a 70-degree angle and you're trying to get, that's not called within your reach. Well, you don't put your life in jeopardy. Boy, Rabbanan asked the question, what about the other way around? What happens? You cannot reach the, let's say the garden is elevated, I don't know, let's say 3 amas from the garden below. And it's coming, the roots are very deeply embedded in your thing. But the branches are growing up, so you can reach the branch, but you can't reach the roots. But you can pull the roots out, give a yank. If you pull the branch, via the branch, you can get to the roots. Or forget. Or magili kore, the roots, the vegetables actually going downwards, not upwards. So you get to the roots, and if you pull the roots, you'll get the whole branch. So you cannot reach the branch directly outright, but you can get to all the fruits of this branch by pulling from the roots, where the roots are in your property. What would it be then? Do we say that's because when you pull the roots, the branch comes with it, as if the branch is totally buckles the roots, and that's called that your hand can be pushed? It doesn't mean your hand has to go directly there, even if it's through this method, or not. Take remains the question. Okay, somebody wants to say the last part. Make a seam here. I'm going to say saving it, or keeping the saving the seam as well for Shabbos. If anybody wants, no, a volunteer here.
משום שלטיש said in the name of Shlokish Halach is Rabbi Shimon. Amru Kamei Shavim Malka. They said before Shavim Malka. Amru
Shavim Malka is a machlekes. Who Shavim Malka is? If it's a goy, the king from Persia, it's a big shiloh. Then how can you teach a goy halacha? And even though there's 9 mitzvahs b'nei you have to teach him their dinim. Is how far do you have to go into the intricacies of a machlekes of Rab Shimon and the Tanaim, or just tell them the final halacha? What do you mean when you say ladder? But you're allowed to tell them the mitzvahs. How far does it go? And that's the machlekes here. So those are shayim who say Shavim Malka is Shmuel. Sometimes Shmuel is referred to Shavim Malka, and therefore they hold that you couldn't teach a guy this. Because even though you're allowed to teach a guy dinim, it's too intricate. Machlekes is not what we mean when we say allowed to teach a guy the din that they need to know. Just tell them straight out without Rab Shimon's name, without telling them that there's only machlekes of other Tanoim. We don't agree with it. May Rabbi Yehuda. And others say no. Once you're allowed to teach them a din, you can go to learn pulpul and tzosin and everything else, the din that they need to know. So then that's how Malchus is going to. Anyway, sorry, what you saying? Yeah,
it's interesting. Rashi says that Shavim Malka was a Persian king who was a bucket of din. He knew halach.
Never how do you know halach? You have to learn it. Anyway, continue. Sorry. Period means chaim, charm. And the Vilna brings that means the other say means praise. Thank you. Gratitude.